Well, I'm so glad to be in church today. We're in the middle of an Advent series that we've called Miracle. And an Advent, just so we're all on the same page, Advent is a season of active and expectant waiting. When we talk about Advent, that's what we're talking about. We're remembering the generations of Israelite people who had this promise from God that one day a Messiah was going to come. And for generations, literally thousands of years, they waited for the Messiah to come. We're in Advent, we are remembering that Jesus has come, and we're also reminding ourselves that he will come again. But while we wait, we're active and we're expectant. We're not just sitting back passively doing nothing. No, we're actively engaging in faith, in hope, in love, in joy, in peace with the world around us. And we're expectant. We're believing that God's going to show up and God's going to move. And in our day and in our time, we can see the hand of God at work. That's what it means to wait actively and expectantly. And today, I want to begin in Isaiah chapter 9. This series is called Miracle. And in Isaiah 9, Isaiah tells us about a miracle. Isaiah was a prophet. He's prophesying 700 years before the birth of Jesus. And beginning in verse 1, he talks about how there'll be a hero who will come from the land of Zebulun and Naphtali. This is a region of the Promised Land, specific to a couple of the tribes. And Isaiah says that there's going to come a time when that land, that way by the sea, becomes glorious. And then in verse 2, Isaiah says that the miracle is that the people who walked in darkness will see a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shone. Light will break through the darkness, Isaiah says. What a miracle that will be when light shines brightly in the midst of the darkness. We fast forward a little bit in Isaiah chapter 9. And Isaiah says this, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Today, we're going to talk specifically about why we as people need a Prince of Peace. And what a miracle it is that one called the Prince of Peace has come to us and has made a way for a people who do not know peace to find peace and to know peace and to live with peace. Now, we're going to do this today in a little bit of an interesting fashion. We're going to go to the ancient world for a moment and talk about a man named Samson, another miracle birth story. Today might be the diehard of Advent sermon messages, if you will. It's like, is that a Christmas message? I'm not sure. It might be. There's some elements in there, but Samson's one of those guys where it's like he's a character. He's got some incredible moments. And he's got some really, really low moments. He's called out by God to be a judge of the people of God. He's given this incredible promise, an incredible calling. He has this incredible gift of phenomenal strength. But if you know Samson's story, you know he's a tragic hero. He's got a fatal flaw, if you will. Think literary characters like Shakespeare's Macbeth or Hamlet or the Great Gatsby or Anakin Skywalker. You know, guys that you're like, hey, I see so much potential. And I see the path you're walking, and it's like almost watching a disaster happen in slow motion. Have you ever been in a moment in life where you can see something terrible coming and everybody can see it, but you can't stop it? And it's like time slows down and you can see the crash about to happen. That's Samson's life. You're pulling for him, great potential, but he can't get out of his own way. And through his own poor choices, he ultimately brings about his own tragic end. What's Samson's issue. I think ultimately Samson's problem is he has this lack of peace, a lack of contentment that leads him to seek peace in dangerous places. And I think we can learn a lot from his life. We're going to turn to Judges chapter 13 and spend some time there this morning. As we're turning there are a lot of historians today that call the time since World War II the long peace. And their argument is that in our time and in the time of the world, we haven't had this type of a span of history where the world powers have ceased from fighting one another. So they call it the long peace. Now, there are other historians that look at the world and go, what are you talking about? There's no peace in our world today. Maybe the global superpowers aren't fighting one another, but they're fighting everybody else, and there's peace. There's no peace evident anywhere on our world. And I was reading about this week, and it's interesting. I came across a fascinating article from 1963. New York Times. I'm not going to ask who was alive when that article would have been delivered to your house, but it was about the possibility, the reality of world peace. And this is, 17-ish years, almost 2 decades post-World War II. And they were talking about in this article how peace on earth is actually an illusion. And they talked about the first 5 years after World War II. Here's what was going on in the world in the 5 years from the end of World War II. There was an uprising in Iran and also in Madagascar. There was a revolution in Indonesia. There was a civil war in Greece, another in China, another in Bolivia. There were revolts in Paraguay. There was a war between the Islamic nations and Israel going on. There was conflict in Burma and the Philippines. And that's just the first 5 years post-World War II. It hasn't slowed down since, and that article actually tracked all the way up to 63. But here's how that 1963 article ends. In spite of man's vaunted advancing civilization, and regardless of his multitude of efforts to negotiate peace for the world, he has not been able to curb his destructive and sanguinary tendencies. By the way, what a word to put in a newspaper. Times have changed since 1963, have they not? He has apparently not improved over his barbaric and belligerent ancestors. In fact, he has retrogressed. He's going the wrong direction, this article says. The total of 50 or more conflicts in the 17 enlightened post-World War II years provides us with a statistical average of 2.94 new wars per year compared with the historical average of 2.61. Thus, in the past 2 decades, not only has man managed to upgrade his ability to make war on an ever more massive scale, he has also succeeded in increasing the density of conflicts per annum. The conclusion is inescapable. Peace in our time is a fable. End scene. Peace in our time is a fable. Today, nearly half of the countries in the world are involved in some sort of conflict beyond their border. Nearly 100 countries in total. Peace on earth, peace around us would be a miracle, would it not? And some of you, if you're honest today, that's all you want is peace around you. Peace in your marriage, peace in your family, peace in your job, peace in your soul. Peace around us would be a miracle, and so too often would, it seems like, peace within us be a miracle. Sometimes I think we're like the historians. We're chasing peace. A long peace would be great, but in the illusion of that peace, in lieu of that peace, we're like, oh yeah, I'm great. Life is great. I feel great. Everything's going well. All the while, we turn a blind eye to the real conflict and chaos happening on the inside. So if you're here today and you're like, I feel like I'm chasing peace, is it possible that peace can be called, that peace can be found, peace can be encountered in our day and time? I think we can learn some things from Samson's story today. Judges chapter 13, the author begins with a haunting phrase that we see through, multiple times in the Old Testament. Verse 1, and the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so that the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. So the scene is set. There is not peace for the people of Israel. They're doing their own thing. They're going their own way. And so God, in judgment, gives the people of Israel into the control, under the authority of the Philistine nation. Now, the Philistines, they are everything the people of God were called to not be. If you imagine the worst, anything goes, that's the Philistine world. Their religion is broken, child sacrifice, paganism at its worst. All of that is happening in the nation of the Philistines. And they're now the ones in authority over the people of Israel. Is there peace in Israel? Not in this day. Now, there was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, the tribe of Dan, whose name was Manoah. And his wife was barren and had no children. The angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink. Eat nothing unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. And he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. What a statement. I love that. I did not ask where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. So now we have this announcement to Manoah's wife that even though she's barren, has borne no children, the angel of God shows up and she's like, this is amazing. And the angel says, you will give birth to a son. Now, he's a special son. He's a significant human being in the plan and the purposes of God. He's to be a Nazarite from the womb. Like, what's a Nazarite? Well, we're going to read about the Nazarite vow in just a moment. But what you need to know is this, that to be a Nazarite meant that you were to be holy unto the Lord. You were set apart to the glory of God. So normally, the way it worked in these days, someone would come to a place in their life where they really wanted God to show up, or they really needed something from God, or they really wanted to worship God to the utmost level. And so they would take the Nazarite vow. And basically what that meant was that for a period of time, they were setting some things aside to focus fully their attention, their devotion, their affection on God. It's not normal for someone to be a Nazarite from birth to death. Yet that was the call of God on Samson's life. Samson didn't get to willingly make the Nazarite vow. The angel of the Lord shows up and says to Manoah and his wife, your son will be a Nazarite, consecrated out, set apart for my glory. You're like, well, what's the deal with the Nazarite vow? If you go back to Numbers chapter 6, we can read about the Nazarite vow. It's worth looking at this morning. In Numbers chapter 6, the Lord speaks to Moses, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazarite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar made from wine or strong drink, and he shall not drink any juice of grapes or eat grapes, fresh or dried, all the days of his separation. He shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, not even the seeds or the skins. All the days of his vow of separation, no razor shall touch his head. Until the time is completed for which he separates himself to the Lord, he shall be holy. He shall let the locks of hair of his head grow long. All the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body, not even for his father or for his mother, for his brother or sister, if they die, shall he make himself unclean, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation, he is holy to the Lord. So do you see what's happening here with the Nazirite vow? God tells Moses that when someone takes the Nazirite vow, they are separating themselves from the things of this world. They're pulling back from the temporary in order to separate themselves to God Almighty. So you're separate from in order to be separate to. You with me there? And the refrain that you see in this Nazirite vow is that you're holy to the Lord. You're consecrated, you're set apart, you're called out, you're distinct from the world in order to give glory to God. And as part of this vow, there are really three things that we see in number 6. You're separated out from strong drink. You're separated out from being in the presence of death. And then you're not allowed to cut your hair. No razor to the head. No razor to the head. So those three things make up the Nazirite vow. Why would you do this? So that you can focus, again, all your attention, all your devotion on God. And this is the word that Manoah and his wife get from the angel. Your son is to be a Nazirite from beginning to end. Holy unto God. And he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. So there's identity, Nazirite, and purpose, deliverer, wrapped up in this message that the angel gives to Manoah's wife. And so Manoah, verse 8 of Judges 13, he prays to the Lord and said, "O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with the child who will be born." Anybody ever prayed that prayer? I need an angel to show up and teach me what to do with this kid. That's what Manoah says. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, "Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me." And Manoah arose, went after his wife, came to the man and said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman?" And he said, "I am." And Manoah said, "Now when your words come true, what is to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission?" And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. And she may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine nor strong drink or eat any unclean thing. All that I have commanded her, let her observe." So Manoah, when he finally gets to speak to the angel, he's like, "Tell me what you told her. What is this child all about?" I love Manoah's two questions. What is to be this child's manner of life? And what is to be his mission? By the way, those two questions are questions we all need to answer, are they not? What is to be my manner of life? Who am I? And what's my mission? Purpose. Why am I here? Identity, purpose. Everybody is desperate for identity and purpose. Now, in this case, it's fascinating. The angel looks back at Manoah and he's like, "I already told you. I already told you." His identity is he's a Nazirite. He's consecrated unto God. He's set apart for the glory of God. That's who he is. And his mission in life, his purpose in life, he's to be the deliverer of the people of God. He shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Identity and purpose. Nazirite and deliverer. That is the calling of God on Samson's life. What a great start for Samson. Isn't that a great start? Like you're to separate it out from birth to the glory of God. You're going to be used by God to begin the process of delivering God's people from oppression that's been going on for decades. They're under the weight of the Philistines, but Samson, you're going to be the guy who walks in and leads the people of God out into freedom. It's a great start. It's a great start. The Clemson Tigers won a national championship the year that Noah, my oldest son, was born. 2019, my youngest son was born. They won a national championship that year. I had high hopes for this year, considering we're bringing a child into the world at the end of this year, but that didn't happen this year. So, I love a good start, right? There's something about a good start. And you love a good start when things get off on the right foot. You wake up in the morning and you're like, hey, you land on the right side of the bed and traffic's good on the way to the office and there's no conflict, in the morning. Like a good start's a big deal. On the other side of the equation, you ever wake up thinking everything's going to be great and one thing happens and you're like, well, the day's tanked. Great, may as well just go back to bed and try again tomorrow. Right? There's something about a bad start. As good as a good start can be, a bad start can be just as day shifting, if you will. Samson gets a great start. He gets a great start. He's got a calling from God. And yet, as we look at Samson's life, it seems as if it's never enough. And as I was thinking about Samson this week, it's almost as if he never comes to peace with who God has made him to be and what God has called him to do. And I want to just summarize really quickly the rest of Samson's story. Samson's born, and at the end of Judges 13, the last verse, it says, the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. So chapter 13, this birth narrative, this miraculous birth of the one who is to be a Nazirite and a deliverer, the birth narrative ends with the Spirit of God at work in Samson's life. He's got a calling, he's got an identity from God, and then Judges 14 happens. Now here's what you need to know about Samson. Samson's got some incredibly high moments where God uses him in powerful ways. And then there's some other moments where it's as if Samson evaluates the landscape of his life and goes, what is the absolute worst possible decision I could make right now? Yeah, I'll do that. And it's not anything in between. It's like Samson is either being used in powerful and profound ways to the glory of God, or he's making the worst possible decision he could make at that point in time. Chapter 14 begins, and Samson, an Israelite, a Nazirite, called apart for the glory of God, the deliverer of the people of God, he looks out and he sees a woman from the Philistines that he loves. Now, what's the issue with that? Well, according to Mosaic law, the Israelite people were not allowed to marry someone from another nation of a different faith. So they couldn't, the intermarriage between nations because of the faith element was forbidden. But Samson looks out and he sees one of the daughters of the Philistines. He comes to his mom and his dad and he says, hey, I found a wife. She's a Philistine. And then he tells his parents, he says, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. For she's right in my eyes. And that becomes the trajectory for Samson's life. I see something. I want something. It's right in my eyes. Forget what God says. I want what I want. And so Samson's parents, they bring this Philistinian woman to him. He marries her. In this narrative, there's a young lion that shows up. Samson tears the lion apart with his bare hands. Incredible feat of strength. Worst possible decision at the moment. Both things happening in Samson's life at the same time. Later, some days, he goes back to take his wife back home with him. And as he's going, he sees the carcass of the dead lion that he killed a few days before. And some bees have taken up residence, made honey in the carcass. Samson walks by, scoops some honey out of the carcass, and begins to eat the honey. Seems to be a side note in the text, except for we know he took a Nazirite vow, which meant that he couldn't get anywhere near a dead body, including the dead carcass of a lion. So Samson goes on, and there's this weird scene in 14 where Samson puts a riddle up to the people of the Philistines and basically says, hey, if you can solve the riddle, I'll give you 30 garments of linen. If you can't solve the riddle, you give me 30 garments of linen and 30 changes of clothes. And he basically confesses to eating honey from the lion's carcass, and they can't solve the riddle. Philistines can't solve the riddle. And so, fourth day, they come to Samson's wife, and they say, hey, you tricked your husband into telling us what the riddle means. And she does. She gets the answer from Samson. She goes and betrays her husband to the Philistines, and now there's conflict in the marriage because we've got two different aims in the relationship. Samson is aiming one way. His wife is loyal to her people more so than to her marriage, and it's a mess. The Spirit of God at the end of 14 rushes upon Samson, and he takes down 30 men from the Philistines. And then his wife is given away to another man. So she's out of the picture, kind of. She's back in 15 a little bit, but another crazy moment where Samson takes out a lot of Philistines, lights fire to one of their village by catching 300 foxes and tying some fire into their tails and sending them out to the grain. You should read chapter 15. It's pretty wild. Samson's story. Just out of curiosity, have you read the book of Judges recently? You should read the book of Judges because it's just this fascinating picture of God at work and human brokenness. And we see it. Like it's Samson's doing something incredible. Samson is falling apart. So Samson sends the foxes out into the village of the Philistines, and he ends up tied up, bound, because they catch him and they're not real thrilled with what he did. But the Spirit of God comes upon him. He's able to get loose from the ropes. It says the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire. He breaks free. But this is like some superhero scene from a movie. He's breaking out of the ropes. He takes a fresh jawbone from a donkey and takes down 1,000 Philistines. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men. So God's using him. God's showing the Philistines through Samson that God's the deliverer. And you would think that at this point in time, maybe Samson's learning a little bit. I can't trust the Philistines. I need to trust the calling that God has given me. I need to trust who God has said that I am. But then chapter 16 happens. Samson goes to Gaza. And here it is again. He sees a prostitute. And he wants the prostitute. And so he goes to the prostitute. It's right in his eyes. Philistines know he's there. They set up an ambush for him. He's able to break free and get away. After this, again, you would think he would have learned. He has not learned. Verse 4 of chapter 16, he loves a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. She's a Philistine. And so, from the beginning of this relationship, the Philistines are playing Delilah against Samson. Here's our end. Here's how we take him down. Samson can't get past what he sees and what he wants. No matter how much God uses him, he never seems to find peace in himself. And so he goes to Delilah. And Delilah, at the bidding of the Philistinian leaders, says to Samson, tell me how you're so strong. I won't tell anybody. Tell me your secret. What's the secret to your strength? And a couple of times, Samson lies to her, tricks her. Delilah comes back and fusses at him for giving her bad information. And you would think, again, at some point in time, when Samson wakes up, finds himself tied up with ropes, you would think he would put two and two together here. When Samson finds himself having had happened to him, whatever he's told Delilah is what takes away his strength. But verse 13, it happens again. Delilah says to Samson, until now you've mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound. And now the story gets a little bit closer to the truth. He said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my hair with the web and fasten it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak like any other man. And so while he slept, Delilah's braiding his hair up. She made them tight with the pin and says to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he wakes up from his sleep, pulls away the pin, the loom, and the web. So she said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You've mocked me these 3 times. You have not told me where your great strength lies. And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his heart. And he said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And so guess what happens that night? Delilah tells the Philistines, we got to cut the man's hair. We cut his hair, he loses his strength, we take him out. She calls a man, has him shave off the 7 locks of his head, and Samson's strength leaves him. Not only does Samson's strength leave him, verse 20, she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he woke from his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. So Samson gets to a point where he has done it his way so long. And he thinks, I will do for myself what I've done for myself every other time. I'll figure it out. I'll fight through it. Myself has the power to set myself free. But it says that the Lord leaves him. And he becomes, in chapter 16, this picture of one with incredible potential who wastes it because he can't get out of his own way. He can't get out of his own way. Why can he not get out of his own way? Because he never seems to be at peace. He continually chooses to run to that which God has forbidden in an attempt to satisfy some desire in himself that he refuses to let God fill. And it has catastrophic consequences in his life. The rest of the story, you may have heard it before. Samson finds himself bound at the front of a temple with great pillars. And in that moment, he repents. He turns to God and says, God, one more time. Strengthen me one more time. The Spirit of God comes upon him. He's able to throw down the pillars, and 3,000 Philistines die, even as Samson dies. I told you, the diehard of Advent messages. What do we learn from Samson? One, I think we see the power of peace. Peace is a powerful thing. There's something powerful about someone who walks in the midst of a chaotic world and lives with peace. Now, you know it and I know it. When somebody comes in the room who, even in the midst of difficulty and pain and trial, when they're stable and there's genuine joy there, and there's a faith, a trust, a hope in God that transcends circumstances, there's something profound about that, is there not? And there's something attractive about that. There's something incredible. There's something miraculous about a person who's truly at peace. So how do we become a person truly at peace? A couple of thoughts. Number one, peace has to be detached from what is temporary. It has to be detached from what is temporary. What's Samson's deal? He's a man who is led by his desire. Whatever he wants, whatever he feels, that's where he goes. And whether that leads him to forbidden honey or to marry a woman whose aim in life was drastically different than the calling God had given him, Samson's desire leads him to a prostitute, leads him to Delilah. What Samson sees, he wants, and what's right in his eyes, that's what he pursues. And he's seeking peace in forbidden places. Why? Because he can't detach peace from that which is temporary. Here's the application for us today. At some point in time in your life, you're going to find yourself wanting something that is contrary to the plan and the purpose of God. At some point in time, you're going to find in yourself a desire that's counter to the Word of God. Samson's got this calling from God. You're a Nazirite. 3 things you can't do. Stay away from strong drink. Don't cut your hair. Don't get near a dead body. Why? You're holy unto God. And yet Samson constantly, when his desire leads him astray, runs out of bounds, trying to fulfill something that's broken on the inside with that which God has said isn't good for him. Wisdom's a big deal, y'all. And you and I, we need the wisdom in our decision-making process to be able to take a step back when what we want, what we feel is different than what God says. Wisdom is the ability to step back and go, okay, God says this, but I want that. Which way is the right way to go? Samson, when God says and I want are different things, Samson's all about the want. And he goes to the I want every single time. What I want for us to be able to do is to step back and go, you know what? If God says something that's different than what I want, I need to trust what God says. I need to not look for peace in what I want. I need to anchor myself to what God says. Because what do we know about God? He's good. He's kind, he's gracious. His law, his word, his commandments aren't a burden to lay on our shoulders to weigh us down. They're actually the key to our freedom. When God says something to us, it's not to limit us or restrict us or to keep us from something that is necessary. It's actually to make us more like him. When God gives us his command, his word, when God asks us to obey, he's a good father who knows what's best for his kids. He wants what's best for us. He's not trying to keep anything we need from us. He's trying to lead us to that which is better. And so we've got to have the ability to separate out our peace from the feelings that are temporary, from the finances that are temporary, from the health that's temporary, from the job that's temporary, from the relationships that are temporary. We've got to be able to separate our peace out from the good stuff in life too. Sometimes we can find our peace in showing up at church and making sure that we're checking off the Bible time each week, or serving or doing something good for somebody else. And we make peace about the circumstances. We make peace about what we have done, but peace has to be detached from the temporary stuff, even the temporary good stuff. Now, James, why do you say that? Because number 2, peace, ultimately, real peace is only found in the person and work of Jesus. You're like, but Samson didn't know Jesus. He didn't have the chance. Like, Jesus hadn't come yet, I know. But I want you to think about Samson. He's a Nazirite, holy unto God. He's the deliverer. And what do we see in Samson's life? Well, he doesn't do a great job at living holy. He doesn't do a great job at honoring God by living his calling. He doesn't do a great job at delivering the people of God. Jesus, when he shows up on the scene a few thousand years later, a few hundred years later, Isaiah 9 says he's the miracle, the Messiah, the promised Son, the light in the darkness. He's the wonderful Counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He is the Holy One of God. He is the consecrated one unto God. He is the one who's set apart. And can I tell you, Jesus never wavers in his holiness. He never wavers in obedience. He never wavers in his righteousness. Jesus does not fail to deliver fully on his promises. Jesus does not fail to deliver the people of God. Samson is an imperfect judge. He's a flawed human. He fails and he falters. And even though at the end he comes back to God, when you look at his story is a cautionary tale. Jesus, he never fails. He never fails. He's the perfect one, the perfect Son of God. He is the ultimate deliverer of all who will call upon his name, of all who look to him in faith. Real peace is only found in the person and work of Jesus. If you're looking for peace, you're chasing peace. If you're looking anywhere other than Jesus, you will be left wanting. You'll be left wanting. And the third thing for us today, the peace that comes from Jesus has the power to shift how we see the temporary. I love that peace is not just an idea or something that we can find in eternity. It's certainly going to be present in eternity. We'll be at peace forever. But when you know Jesus, how many of you know that changes how you see the world around you today? It doesn't minimize the stuff in your life. It doesn't minimize the job, the relationships, the finance. It doesn't minimize that. It just reframes it. And all of a sudden, you've got a new relationship to the people around you. You've got a new relationship to how you use your money. You've got a new relationship to how you manage desire, how you navigate temptation. You've got a new relationship to how you walk through life because you're at peace with God. And that peace with God changes everything. Peace in us is a miracle. Mark Sayers wrote a book called Non-Anxious Presence a few years ago, and his argument was there's something compelling when somebody's able to maintain stability in the midst of an unpredictable and chaotic world. When somebody walks in like Jason Bourne in the midst of a race, a chase, and the stakes are high and everything's intense and things are blowing up and Jason Bourne's just taking everything in, it's incredible. James Bond in Skyfall, when the train's exploding around him and he lands on his feet and he fixes his cufflinks and adjusts his jacket. It's a man at peace. You're like, those guys are crazy and those are movies and they're not real. I know. But you think about the teacher in a classroom with kids after the holidays, or the room's in chaos and the teacher with a word, with a calming presence is able to bring order. There's something compelling about that. The parent who, when the child is hit their max and the wheels are falling off and the parent's able to just, with a touch or a word and without raising their voice, just stabilize. The leader who in a moment of crisis steps in and doesn't downplay what's going on, but says, hey, here's the reality of the situation. Here's what we're going to do. There's something compelling about a person at peace. The greatest example I've ever seen in my life, I remember being in the hospital room with my dad after his stroke, and this was a decade ago, and the doctor at the time comes in and says, hey, we don't know if he's going to make it. Right now, it's too early to tell. We don't know what's coming next. And doctor leaves, and that's not the news you want in the hospital room. And I'm sitting there with my mom, and she looks at me and she says, I just want you to know, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. And that was the farthest thing from what I was feeling in that moment. Now, this is my dad. I need my dad. I've got a son that's about to be born in a couple months. I need my dad. And my mom's like, I know God's got me and he's got us, and we're going to be okay. There's something compelling about peace in the midst of the chaos. And Paul says in Ephesians chapter 2 that Jesus has made peace available to us by the blood of the cross. And so if you're looking anywhere else for peace today, I just want you to know you need to look to Jesus. You need to turn to Jesus. You need to trust Jesus in faith and surrender. So Father, I pray today that we would be people who find peace in the person and work of Jesus. Help us to navigate this world with wisdom, to be able to separate desire and your word and the feelings and the pull of this world, and to sort through that in a way, God, that ultimately allows us to make decisions from a place of stability and hope, rather than being led simply by what is right in our own eyes. Father, I pray for people in the room today that don't know the peace of Christ, that even now they would turn from sin and place faith in Jesus. God, we ask that as we sing in faith this morning, that your Spirit would move and that you would be at work. In Jesus' name, everybody says together, amen. Church, we're going to stand, we're going to sing together. This is a moment for you to respond. If God's been working in your heart today and you've got a decision you need to make, I'll be at the back, would love to talk with you. If you just need to worship God for his faithfulness to you, celebrate his goodness, his grace, you respond this morning as the Spirit leads.